Good afternoon. It's Tuesday, June 16th. I'm Laura Cornfield, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. Hamas officials have arrived in Qatar with the intention of formulating a 5-year ceasefire plan with Israel. According to Israel Radio, Hamas leaders Khaled Mashal and Musa Abu Marzouk are leading the Hamas team, which is reportedly intent on reaching an agreement. According to reports out of Doha, among the items included in the proposed deal is the creation of a floating Gaza port, but the building of an airport would be delayed for the time being. Negotiations with Israel reportedly began on June 4th. The truce proposal is backed by both Qatar and Turkey and is based on an outline formulated by UN Special Envoy to the Middle East, Mykola Mladenov. Israel and Hamas have maintained a tacit ceasefire since coming to terms on a truce in late August that was brokered by Egypt to end the Gaza war last year. The calm has been tested in recent weeks as Salafist groups fired rockets from Gaza into Israel, drawing Israeli airstrikes on Hamas facilities. As the de facto ruler of the Strip, Israel holds Hamas responsible for all rocket fire. Both the White House and the Prime Minister's office are denying reports in the Israeli media that President Obama invited Prime Minister Netanyahu for talks in Washington in July. The denials followed a report in the Yediot Achronot newspaper quoting an unidentified source at the State Department saying that the talks would take place in Washington next month after the deadline for reaching a nuclear agreement with Iran. Israel remains strongly opposed to the Iran agreement, which is still being negotiated between Iran and 6 world powers. Relations have been strained between Washington and Jerusalem since Netanyahu spoke against the nuclear agreement with Iran in March to a joint session of the U.S. Congress. Obama declined to meet Netanyahu at that time, saying that it was inappropriate ahead of the Israeli elections. More incriminating allegations against MK Oren Khazan, this time sexual harassment. According to a report on Channel 10, women who worked at a bar Khazan once operated at the Fleischer Hotel in Tel Aviv, the MK allegedly sexually harassed and exposed himself to them. He would make himself accidentally bump up against us and then touch us, the women claim, adding that everyone was afraid to be alone with him at closing time because he would be drunk and behave inappropriately. One of Khazan's former partners backed up the workers' accusations, saying that they had several staff meetings about the complaints and Khazan was warned about his behavior. The Attorney General has agreed to investigate the allegations after Meretz MK Michal Rosin made a request. Opposition leader Isaac Herzog said the accusations are staining the entire Knesset. Khazan has denied any wrongdoing and said the witch hunt against him continues. IBA's Eli Wagalanter asked Knesset members whether allegations against a fellow MK made them feel embarrassed.
I refuse to be embarrassed. It's not my embarrassed. It's his. And I think there's supposed to be an investigation by the police to check with these Israelis that gave the testimony in Channel 10 to say what they gone through under his management. And I think this is sexual harassment, and this is a big problem in Israel. And we have to support these women and all women with defending themselves against sexual harassment, especially at workplace, and I think there's supposed to be an investigation soon as better.
It troubles everybody, also of course me. The allegations are very severe and serious. That's on the one side. On the other side, he's since the whole thing started, he claims that he didn't do anything, and the whole thing is a big attack on his name. So the truth has to be found. If he's not guilty, this is a very serious allegation against the media, on the one hand. On the other hand, if these allegations are true, then I think this is not appropriate actions for a Knesset member, and I think he'll need to consider his way in this Knesset.
I have to tell you that I'm deeply stressed about what's going on with Chaver Knesset, with MK Khazan. Mostly, by the way, in the normative aspects. Even if there won't be any charges, the fact that he came to the Central Committee of the Likud Party and got applaud there, this is something that is deeply disturbing. If people think that this is like what we call in Hebrew gever gever, this is something that has influence about all the way we treat women in Israel, and I think that it's deeply disturbing. But I have to tell you that the new allegation has something also a good aspect. It's a weird way to say that, but Before the new allegation, there was a lacune in the Israeli law that no one can actually interrogate the allegation regarding MK Khazan. Since the new allegation happened in Israel, I think that's the time for the police and the justice system to get started and try to find out the allegation, whether they're true or not. I think that also should be the interest of MK Khazan, so we'll know the truth.
Controversy continues to surround News, Sport and Culture Minister Miri Regev. The latest point of contention relates to the screening of a documentary about Yitzhak Rabin's assassin, Yigal Amir, which portrays him in a sympathetic light. Regev announced the public funding for the Jerusalem Film Festival, where the movie is scheduled to be screened, will be halted if the movie is not cancelled. She was not alone in her criticism of the movie being screened, as former President Shimon Peres and opposition leader Isaac Herzog also called on festival organizers to rethink their decision. Regev continues her hard line regarding budgets for culture. Speaking at the Knesset plenum, Regev said she will not support cultural organizations that boycott and delegitimize Israel. She said that while freedom of expression should be protected, there is no reason taxpayers should cover those who seek to undermine the state of Israel. Whoever wants to defame Israel can do it alone. We won't fund it, Regev added. In regional news, an Egyptian court today confirmed a death sentence handed to ousted Islamist President Mohamed Morsi over a mass prison break during the 2011 uprising that eventually brought him to power. The judge confirmed the ruling after consulting with the country's religious authority as required by Egyptian law in cases involving the death penalty. The religious authority issues non-binding opinions on such sentences. The ruling will automatically be appealed. The judge also confirmed death sentences for 5 other jailed leading members of Morsi's Muslim Brotherhood group. The military overthrew and detained Morsi, Egypt's first freely elected president, in July 2013 amid massive protests demanding his resignation. Earlier, the same court sentenced Morsi to life in prison over charges of conspiring with foreign groups, including Hamas. Cyprus has confirmed that it believes it thwarted a Hezbollah plot to attack Israelis or Jews after bomb-making material was found in a house in Larnaca. A 26-year-old Lebanese-Canadian man is in custody related to the discovery of a massive amount of ammonium nitrate in the basement of a home in Larnaca last month. A few weeks ago, Israel said Cyprus had informed them that the fertilizer was to be used for bombs by Hezbollah and that Israelis or Jews in Cyprus may have been intended targets. Asked about the account while visiting Israel, the Cypriot foreign minister confirmed the information and also talked about trying to cut off the Islamic State attempts to use Cyprus as a route for bringing over foreign volunteers.
First of all, I want to say that you have very good information yourselves. Secondly, this case may probably go in a couple of days in front of the courts. Therefore, I am not permitted to making any comments or assumptions because this may damage the prosecution case.
I see.
But your information that you mentioned is correct. There were a few incidents of this route, very few, but for this reason we have taken all additional measures of vigilance, particularly with European passport holders, in order to cut off such a route.
Druze held another demonstration to highlight the plight of their brethren in Syria and call for their safety. Several hundred members of the community held a protest in the Golan Heights town of Majda Shams. In another demonstration, Likud Deputy Minister Ayub Kara said the most important thing the Syrian Druze need now is more weapons in order to defend themselves. This, as controversy continues over what the Israeli government should do, if anything, to support the Druze in Syria, who have generally backed the Assad regime and now face grave danger from both Islamic State and the Nusra Front. Kara emphasized that the interest of the free world, as well as the moderate Arab world, is to support the Druze. In another bloody day in Syria, rebels fired a barrage of shells at government-held districts in the northern city of Aleppo, killing at least 23 people, including 8 children, and wounding more than 100. State-run Syrian TV said the shelling hit the area of Rahman Mosque and other districts in the contested city, shattering balconies and storefronts. Aleppo has seen heavy fighting and shelling since rebels seized part of the city in 2012. Rebels have targeted government-held neighborhoods in the city in the past, killing dozens, while the Syrian Air Force has attacked opposition-held parts of Aleppo with barrel bombs, killing hundreds of people. An Israeli team of veterinarians is in the Georgian capital of Tbilisi to lend assistance after a deadly flood turned wild animals free to run rampant in the city, which is home to over 1 million people. The Israeli vets arrived equipped with antibiotics and tranquilizer guns. Residents were urged to stay locked in their homes with the warning that the hungry beasts are likely to attack. The flooding killed 12 people as the Ver River turned into a raging torrent. The Tbilisi Zoo is situated on the banks of the river, and the rushing water caused the animals to flee for their lives. 3 zoo workers were killed while trying to save the animals. Wild animals on the loose included lions, tigers, hyenas, penguins, a crocodile, wolves, bears, and a hippo. Many animals washed away in the flood, while others were rescued and taken to safety after being shot with tranquilizer darts. Our reporter Aryeh O'Sullivan spoke to Dr. Neely Avni Magen, the chief veterinarian from the Jerusalem Biblical Zoo, who is part of the Israeli team in Tbilisi.
We just finished the first diagnostics together with veterinarians that are here in the zoo to see the survivors, how we can help them with treatment and do some prognosis to the situation.
And the situation at the moment is after 48 hours, all the wild animals that escaped have been brought back or killed?
Yes, yes. There are still 3 animals that are missing, but probably are inside the mud. It will take some time to find them and to know that all the list of missings are located.
You know, it's a very unusual situation to have hippopotamus and bear and lions and zebras walking around the city, isn't it?
Completely. And it's something that it's a nightmare for every zoo, that's the truth. But it also it was something that was really unpredictable, and since the history of Tbilisi, nobody remembers this kind of flooding.
A suspected murder in a moshav in Emek Beit Shan. The body of 45-year-old Rachel Amzalig was found with signs of violence this morning. Her 65-year-old partner was detained for questioning, and the court has extended his remand this afternoon. An argument over property is apparently the motive for the murder. The man was the one who notified police that he had killed the victim. The couple have a 7-year-old child. A gag order has been placed on details of the investigation. The Knesset held a first caucus meeting aimed at combating the BDS movement. Organized by Likud MK Dr. Anat Berko, the forum heard from Dr. Kanta Ahmed, a Muslim doctor of Pakistani descent. They told IBA's Aryeh O'Sullivan that the liberal left, calling for boycotting Israel, were in effect supporting Islamists.
We've seen views that are strongly supportive of BDS intrude even in the most elite journals, which troubles me as an academic because it limits academic freedom, but even more importantly as an observing Muslim, it gives false legitimacy to Islamists. Islamists, unlike Islam, see all Jewish identity, Jewry, Israel, Zionism as a cosmic enemy, not a mortal enemy. BDS feeds directly into that by delegitimizing the state of Israel, by dehumanizing Jewish people, and that gives enormous power, not just to the BDS movement, to Islamist objectives.
What's the best way to combat this BDS movement?
I think to expose it as fraudulent. It is fundamentally anti-democratic. BDS is seeking to portray itself as a proponent and liberator of, let's say, the Palestinian people. It is actually promoting a means to isolate Israel, which is a legitimate state, economically, culturally, academically, and treat it very differently than any other state in the world, falsely portraying it as an apartheid state. It is socially unacceptable to promote an anti-Semitic view in the realm of secular humanism. This is not allowed. But to say that you're anti-Zionist or anti-Israel is now not only without reprisal, but a badge of honor. And we need to expose it as a false position. If you want to have an extreme position to boycott a nation, say it. Do not do it in the aegis of a pro-democratic position.
The reality is that now we are facing a wave of anti-Semitism, not just to us as Jews, each one of us, but as a whole, as the state of the Jewish people. So I think that we need to combat it together and to stand together. It doesn't mean that you need to be Jewish to do that. It means that you need to be really committed to the truth, to the freedom, to the democracy, and to the humankind.
BDS is an example of non-violent Islamism in action. It may have different sentiments. Non-violent Islamism is using institutions to promote a pro-Islamist view. Pro-Islamist view, one of the central philosophies, Jews, Zionism, Israel is a cosmic enemy. If you disguise that in an activity on campuses that seems to be a liberating force for a minority people, that serves institutional Islamists. So while we both understand Dr. Burko's scholarship is in decades of looking at suicide bombers. I've met with suicide operatives in Pakistan who were children. While her scholarship is based in the initiation of violent Islamism, non-violent institutional Islamism has become much, much bigger and much harder to combat. That's what we were just discussing in her initiative in this Knesset caucus, is the need for a kind of an iron dome to protect academia, cultural and economic boycott as at least a beginning.
It's another form of terrorism.
Bush the father, Bush the son, and now Bush the brother. Former Florida Governor Jeb Bush has officially thrown his hat in the ring in a bid for the 2016 Republican presidential nomination. Vowing to fix a dysfunctional Washington, the 62-year-old Bush will try to move out of the shadow of the White House legacies of his father and brother. He is trying to portray himself as an anti-Washington figure with a can-do spirit. He also has strong views on American foreign policy, including relations with Israel.
It's still a mystery to me why, in these violent times, the president a few months ago thought it relevant at a prayer breakfast to bring up the Crusades. Americans don't need lectures on the Middle Ages when we're dealing abroad with modern horrors committed by fanatics. From the beginning, our president and his foreign policy team have been so eager to be the history makers that they failed to be the peacemakers. With their phone-it-in foreign policy, the Obama, Clinton, Kerry team is leaving a legacy of crises uncontained, violence unopposed, enemies unnamed, friends undefended, and alliances unraveling. This supposedly risk-adverse administration is also running us straight in the direction of the greatest risk of all, military inferiority. It will go on automatically until a president steps in to rebuild our armed forces and take care of our troops and our veterans. We keep dependable friends in this world by being dependable ourselves. I will rebuild our vital friendships, and that starts by standing with the brave democratic state of Israel.
This evening, a memorial concert marking a year since the murder of the three teenagers Elad Yifrach, Gilad Sher, and Naftali Frankel will be held at the Renana Park Amphitheater. The families will be in attendance alongside former Chief of Staff Benny Gantz, Ashkenazi Chief Rabbi Benny Lau, and Renana Mayor Zev Bielski. Meanwhile, the IDF's paratroopers training base in Shumria received a Torah scroll last night in a moving ceremony also attended by the families of the murdered teens. The Torah scroll was written in their memory in a project funded by anonymous donors. The family specifically requested that the scroll be donated to this training base in gratitude for the efforts the unit took to find their son during last summer's Operation Brother's Keeper. Also in attendance was Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's wife, Sarah, who told the families that they entered her heart as well as the heart of the entire nation. She praised the families for showing awe-inspiring mental strength and strong faith. Good news for drivers. The price of mandatory car insurance will drop over the next 3 years. This following an announcement from the Carnegie Insurance Corporation that they accumulated a surplus of 1.5 billion shekels from car owners, and the reduction is in fact a payback plan. Next year's mandatory car insurance will be cut by 250 shekels. the following year by 200 shekels, and the third year by 50 shekels. In local money matters, the shekel was mixed in foreign currency trading, while shares were up on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange. Here are the late afternoon numbers. Temperatures are on the rise with shore heat wave conditions expected later in the week. Here are the highs and lows for the next 24 hours at home and abroad. And that's all for this newscast. Aaron Viner will be here tomorrow with more news from Israel and abroad. Until then, I'm Laura Cornfield wishing you a great evening and shalom from Jerusalem.